what we do in Flying Flea is that we talk to a lot of young creative folks like you guys, and you guys. I'll leave the introduction to you guys because you guys do some really new stuff linked to technology, creativity, art, and AI. So why don't we start with a round of introduction, Kedar, with you?
Sure, Abhishek. Thank you so much. I'm Kedar. I am a computational designer, which means I design things using algorithms. I specialize in 3D printed footwear, like the ones I'm wearing. And I've been working in this space for like 3 years.
Very cool. I have lots of questions for you later.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Goji. I make AI visuals, 3D visuals, and just been doing that with brands for some time now. Been in this marketing space, so it's been really fun. I think Flying Flea is doing a really cool initiative by kind of, accentuating these things about the bike as well and allowing us to kind of make these really cool visualizers and even like visual ways of representation.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ansh. I'm a motion designer turned architect, natural builder, and then I have a contemporary art practice, what you see around this room. So a lot of interactive installations that involve play and so we'll probably talk about things.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the stuff that you've created for us. I think we take a lot of inspiration from the kind of work that you guys are doing. And we hope that Flying Flea as a platform is able to bring together creative people like you and sort of become an inspiration for the brand and for the larger audience. Let me start with a question which is more linked to the brand. What does live lightly mean to you guys?
I think that live lightly means that you live freely without too much inhibition and kind of living in the moment without thinking about the future or the past too much.
For me, I think it's just about not being tied down. That's what I think living lightly means.
I think it's the pace by which you live your life, I think. So living lightly could in a way also translate to how sometimes you have to be like slow down in your lives and like retrospect.
I see very interesting views. You're saying slow down, respect. Kedar mentioned about living in the moment and sort of living unhinged and, almost like parachute, which is pretty much the symbol that we have of Flying Flea. In fact, that's what the brand believes in. Now, how do you guys practice this in your work? Do you guys see any relevance or importance of how does this get incorporated in your work life, or is this more a personal life philosophy that works?
I think for me, when I say not being tied down, it's even to ideas. So I feel that's how I'm not really tied down to one thing. So generally when I'm creating something, it's trying to look at it through multiple perspectives most of the time. So that's what I try and do. So that's how I think I incorporate that living lightly, not being too weighted with any ideas. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay, what do you think about how does this make a difference in your work life?
I agree with what Goji said. I think it's also about not being tied down to one idea. Maybe in my work life, I tend to be quite disciplined, but sometimes things don't work out with ideas, deals don't go through, things like that happen. You can always reuse these ideas later. So there's always opportunities for that.
Yeah, I think in the similar direction of thought, when we were basically building the house, it is in such a remote location that after there's so many instances that you have planned something, but we learned the hard way that there are so many things that are not in your control, and to let go of those bounds that we create for ourselves and then still have your thoughts and creativity flowing is what I feel that's the space where you can be in the moment, you can still create, you can still be put something out for the world and collectively do something, and yet not be like tied down or be harsh on yourself with things.
So I think I have a question for you, because you have specially used some very traditional techniques and now given it a completely new shape, which in some way is very unhinged, right?
So I think that instantly reminded me of the bike, because also we have been talking about the bike so much, is that how do you, in the house is similar. Again, for context, I think, so me and my brother, we have also, other than my art practice, have a natural building practice where we build mud houses and hand sculpt them ourselves. So that's the house we are talking about. So mud being a traditional material in that sense, and then giving it a new life, because again, maybe like any other vintage or a traditional method of designing, building, it always comes with a lot of apprehension, history, a lot of stereotypes around it. So like for mud, for example, it's a sign of poverty. There's a big myth that it'll just melt away in the rains. But to bring that back and help people understand that it is something breathable, it is something that is good for your health, it is something which can be luxurious and can be also at the same time be good for our planet, and it'll go back to where it comes from. So all of that exists with us, and we can live that life, is what we wanted to put across. And I feel when people come to the house, it's the same like with the bike, that they touch and feel that okay, it looks vintage but modern, and then it's a beautiful combination. I feel like giving something vintage a new life.
Coming to you, Goji, you are at the other end of the spectrum. You're always using the newer methods as latest as possible in the stuff that you create with AI. Do you also take inspiration from the past? Do you use techniques from the past and you mix it with the techniques from the future? What's your process like?
I think now with the state of tools today, it's really important to kind of remember how we used to do things, because it sets up a really good groundwork and base work for you to now curate images, especially with AI. I think the whole game is about curation. It's about choosing the right thing, right? Now that the skill is out of the window, it's about choosing the right image, choosing the right video. And how do you do these, right? It's based on some kind of model that you've built in your head as to what is good or not. And that is a very learned thing through traditional practices like these Gestalt principles, or let's just say doing videos or traditional work, drawing, anything. It comes from there, but then it's so much is still rooted in that tradition, right? You can't just enter into this AI game and then expect to be good, because at some level you need to have done reading and seen a lot of the arts before, and understand why people did certain things and how did they portray these things and why is it portrayed in such a way. And as soon as you get those principles, you apply that, in a very, I think, subconscious way. So it's hard to really pinpoint, but I feel that's how I'm kind of bringing the tradition back.
What I'm hearing is you're saying that the core art is still sort of rooted in your tradition and culture, whereas the way you express it and the way you bring it out, for that you use the latest AI tech in your work.
Yep.
Interesting. You take it even beyond, and you don't just keep it in the virtual world. You make a real product using AI. Why don't you tell us about the process?
So usually we start with some sort of concept or design direction that might reflect something that I'm interested in, or might reflect like some aesthetic direction that we've that I've explored before. And from that I take it into like prompts and decide what words work, what words don't work. It's a lot of, I guess, word crafting. And then eventually from the prompts, it turns into like either images or 3D models or algorithms which make the 3D models. And eventually you get a 3D printed object from that. And I think that staying rooted, like he said, is pretty important, because you still have to know what rhythm, balance, and the rules of form are before you can choose the right outcome. And even when because you don't only have to choose, you still have to do some amount of manual work or some amount of semi-manual algorithmic work. So you still have to know what sculpturally works and what doesn't work, and you have to know about design history to an extent, maybe.
Interesting. Both of you do a lot of work. In fact, even Ansh, you do a lot of work with AI, and there is this growing conversation which has been there for a few years now, that AI is taking up a lot of jobs, and AI is going to replace a lot of people in the workforce. But you guys are at the other end of the spectrum, who's sort of turning it around and saying, why didn't we use AI to make my job? How do you react to that statement?
If I wanted to set up like a app which does a bunch of stuff and then produces some object, I could do that pretty easily. You can vibe code it and then set up like an API with a manufacturer to get stuff printed out. Say I wanted like custom jewelry to be made with people's prompts. It's pretty easy to make that happen eventually.
Does your work involve a lot of involvement of the community, or you do it more just by yourself? Your design inspirations and all are from the...
Mostly by myself. There are 3D printing communities, and there are like footwear communities that I talk to, but I maybe want to draw more inspiration from artists and art movements that I'm interested in. More than looking at what the community is into, because a lot of it is kind of manufactured hype, with shoes especially. So I wouldn't say the community is wrong, but it's maybe not as original as looking inwards in some ways.
What's your point of view on the statement that I made earlier about AI taking up people's jobs?
I feel, it might be cliche to say, but it's always been I think the human condition has always been to make our lives easier. That's always been a huge proponent of evolution. And this is just another part. I think people are just forgetting the macro game, which we've been playing, especially with all the tools that have come out already. I don't think when I was in design school, I was doing that much on paper. I was still in the tech side of most of it. So that was already introduced to me, but maybe let's say a few years ago, they didn't even have that, right? So I think it's just history taking its course, and it's bound to happen.
Yeah, because even in the automobile design, we use AI a fair bit now to see the results faster. You want to see what it's going to look like. Now you can see that you can make that process faster, and you can look at options and iterations much faster, and then take decisions on what. So the decision making is still, to an extent, final decision making still rests with the designers, but they can make the design process much more faster and much more efficient with the use of AI. And I see a lot of application of this in the automobile design. And I'm not just talking about the physicality of it. I'm talking about the mechanics of it, about how it's going to ride, what it's going to feel like in this kind of condition, that kind of condition. And all of that is also something that we're using a lot of AI, especially in EVs, because there's so much of technology involved. So a lot of that can also be understood and developed. Or the speed of development can be faster with the usage of AI. So for us, it's an important aspect. So coming back to the automobile bit, what do you guys see as, how much do you think AI will impact the mobility, or what do you see is the future of mobility?
On the other front as well, I feel like if we use AI as a collaborator is when it makes more sense, and to use it and collaborate with it to create something that has not been done before, rather than like jobs. Of course there would be a lot of this conversation happening, but once this whole bubble where AI is not just thrown as a word like sustainability, like just everywhere, so that's when I think the human point of contact is still important. And if we use AI to make it more humanitarian, like all these tech, that is when I personally feel that is where it is more useful. And then in the future of mobility is what the next thing is. I feel we will be scared of it, of the thoughts that we would like, because we have sci-fi, we have visual references of what it could be. So, and we also parallelly are just like looking at it happening in reality with flying things and like all of that coming in. But I also feel there would be a curve where it will be scary, and then there would be a balance that comes to the technology and a human point of contact with it. So yeah, I think that is what I see happening.
I think in terms of the automobile industry, AI already is allowing individuals to just do a lot more, right? And this is what I think we had also seen to some extent when 3D printing started. When you were able to buy a 3D printer, you can pretty much make anything, whatever you need at home, right? I feel at some point you would be able to print a bike, right? As soon as AI starts to get a little better, maybe just, I can't say in maybe 50 years how it's going to be, but in the next few years, I feel that fabrication might just get a lot quicker and a lot more easier to do by an individual, not necessarily like a huge company. You know? So I feel that could really change things. Imagine like random people making wild automobiles, right? That maybe not everybody would buy, but it's just an exploration of sorts.
Yeah, my own personal bike, right?
Yeah,
I mean something that Kedar is already practicing in his work.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking along the same lines, but also about the speed of iteration and perfecting form and design much more. Say using generative design to lightweight parts, printing them out, having AI think of ways to optimize the design process and optimize the actual form of it. And maybe using AI agents as like user testing if you want to accelerate some part of that. It all leads to much faster design timelines and much better designs eventually.
Ansh, you touched upon something, and I could see that even in your work about the whole emotional connect. And one of the things that gets often talked about again is bringing in of technology sort of makes it emotionally disconnected, or it start becoming more cold. You think that that's the space that needs to be? How do you think technology can make it more emotionally connected rather than making it more disconnected? You think that's a space that needs more focus on, or how does one focus on that?
Yeah, so I have a really good story around this. I went for a guest lecture for a week at Master Interaction Design program in Bangalore itself, and I was looking at their thesis projects, and a lot of them the students were thinking tech first. How can we use the most advanced tech and design a world where using the tech but I felt like what they didn't notice that they're doing is they're slowly completely omitting humans out of it, like human interaction. Like a robot will, instead of a nurse, a robot will go and maybe take our elderly to the hospital or some things like that. And I felt like that that is somewhere we need to understand that we need to use these technologies to come together rather than like divide ourselves. And of course we anyway see it with our screens, and like it is a wall that we create between us, but that is also a way how we all get connected. It's a beautiful technology.
True.
So to use that in ways where you could rather bring the world together and not omit everyone and send them to Mars and have a robotic Earth in a way. So I feel that is very important to have empathy as a designer. And when he was also mentioning about the whole like to make things faster and all that, what's coming in my mind is also how you train these technologies and AI. What do you train them on? Because like in the bike world, there are crazy experienced senior people who would have the knowledge that could train AI into something that could help the future designers and future technicians. But that would come with an empathy, so that keeping those values in mind and not like flowing away with technology. Okay, it's a new fascinating thing and let's go for it, and you forget the past, you forget the people. So I feel that there needs to be a balance to it.
And this reminds me of this book called Alone Together. It's by Sherry Turkle, and she talks about how I think my generation and the ones to come have a very different relationship with tech than, let's say, the older generation. And the book starts off with this thing called the Tamagotchi. It used to be this animal inside a screen that you used to take care of. That completely breaks emotional barriers, right? It's not just a computer anymore. It's not just a electronic device. There's like literally a pet inside that thing so that you're taking care of. So over time, these people have, especially again the younger generations, have developed a very emotional understanding with technology rather than just seeing it as a device. So I feel that's always going to be something that we have, even the way that I deal with my tech it's very weird. Like I think I have emotional connections to inanimate things, so it's kind of weird, but yeah, always going to be present. So
yeah, I mean, when you're creating it, so in your case, because you're creating it, so you obviously have a very interesting emotional connection to your creation.
Yep.
I guess as we start to animate inanimate objects, it might become more like, say, Star Wars. I think in the the fourth Star Wars movie, the droids play like a really big part of the beginning of the story. And they are like, every Star Wars fan has some sort of emotional connection to the droids. Same thing with like the Cars movie. Although they're inanimate objects, they're still like animated and they still have like emotions and everything. So if we maybe do that in a careful way, and I would say you have to be very careful with this, it could be a good way to integrate this, but also create an emotional connection with these animated objects, so to speak.
Right. So it's sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
I just had one point, and that like how we're interacting with even now with even basic services like service-based AI chat things as well. You tend to, that is what I've realized, the people that I've seen interacting with it, like there would be a please and a thank you in your conversation, and that is how the AI is also picking that up, and then like it is constantly be training by like so many people. That's why it's free in a way, right? Like it's about training. So you are using please, you are using thank you, you are treating it as a human being, and there is a emotional way of connecting with it. And then when you think of it, like take a step back and like, oh, I was talking to a computer, so yeah, there is a line there. Like,
yeah, so you're saying, you guys are saying technology with a little bit more empathy and human understanding is the way forward, rather than just users of technology. And I think as this increases more and more, what you're saying is, I think those are lines that human beings have to draw. That where do you draw the line between empathy and just being pure cold, the usage of technology, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and I'm also trying to now think of that, like, but if you're having an emotional connection with technology, I hope we don't get to a place where it's just an emotional connection with technology and not each other, because that we also see somehow with in very younger generation who has even more extremes of like having connections straight off with technology and and then the second thought is that there would be probably a certain time where there would be a very thin line or blurred lines of what emotion connection with a human is and what an emotion connection with AI is. So the empathy that maybe that makes like the relationship with technology and the empathy that imbibes in you, because you have a very intimate connection with your devices from a very young age now. So if that inculcates some kind of an empathy, I hope that empathy then goes back to the world. Like that's another lens to like having technology. Again, I mean, my thought process goes to the fact that how can we use all of these technologies to benefit human connection.
Yeah, or nurture it, the human connections and the emotional connections more. In fact, that's one of the things that we want this motorcycle and this brand as a brand philosophy also, that we want the technology to use the technology to remain more emotionally connected, not just with the device, with the people around you, rather than using it to disconnect you. Because two-wheeler have always been about being connected with the nature, with people, with the machine. So that's what we also hope that or we intend to do, that use technology to remain more emotionally connected and propagate more emotionally connected things than being cold tech. Great. Thanks, guys. I think this was a lovely chat. Thanks for dropping by and thanks for having this conversation.
Thanks for having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
you.
It is a pleasure to obviously be here. Thank you.